And this is where the science becomes something more than science, because the findings did not stay confined to academic journals. They spilled directly into public debate, into politics, into the deeply personal question millions of people in South Asia ask themselves about who they really are. For over a century, certain political and ideological movements in India have promoted the idea that the people who wrote the Vedic texts, the foundational scriptures of Hinduism, were not migrants at all, but the indigenous, unbroken descendants of the genuine, detectable migration event from the Eurasian steppe roughly 4,000 years ago that mixed with and reshaped the existing population. It is important to state clearly that this remains a topic where scientific findings intersect with cultural identity and national politics in ways that generate real controversy. And reasonable people, including credentialed researchers, continue to debate the precise timing, scale, vacuum, and few places on Earth demonstrate that truth more vividly than the ongoing, sometimes fierce, public conversation surrounding what these genomes actually mean for modern identity. What nobody disputes, however, is the staggering diversity revealed by comparing Indian genetic data against a global reference. India, it turns out, is not simply one population. It is arguably one of the most genetically diverse regions on the entire planet, rivaling the genetic diversity found across the whole of Europe, contained within a single nation. A landmark study analyzing genetic variation across India identified well over 100 distinct, genetically distinguishable population groups shaped by thousands of years of a unique cultural institution, endogamy, the practice of marrying strictly within one's own community, caste, or regional group. This practice, which intensified significantly over roughly the past 2,000 years, created something geneticists find almost unprecedented anywhere else in the world. Isolated genetic islands existing side by side within the same towns, the same cities, sometimes the same streets. Populations that have lived in close physical proximity for centuries, while remaining biologically distinct due to social and religious barriers to intermarriage. This is why certain rare genetic diseases appear at dramatically elevated rates within specific Indian communities, a medical reality ever documented in a single continuous geographic and cultural landmass, but from combining ancient genomes with modern medical genetics. Researchers 1,000 years ago are not simply historical trivia. They are actively shaping the medical realities of people alive right now, influencing which diseases run in which families, which, as this research has progressed and as sequencing technology has become faster and dramatically less expensive, the story has continued to expand. Newer excavations pushed back on aspects of the steppe migration timeline, arguing for a more gradual, less dramatic process of mixture, spread out over a longer period rather than a single defined migration wave. Others have proposed that additional smaller migration events, not yet fully mapped, may have occurred both before and after the major steppe movement, adding further layers of complexity to an already intricate story. This is, ultimately, exactly how good science should work, an ongoing process of revision, challenge, and refinement, rather than a single triumphant announcement that closes the book forever. And there is a broader lesson embedded in all of this, one that extends far beyond the borders of South Asia. Every population there's no such thing as a genetically pure nation, ethnicity, or civilization anywhere on the planet. The people of modern Britain carry the genetic legacy of Neolithic farmers, Bronze Age steppe migrants, Roman settlers, Anglo-Saxon invaders, and Viking raiders, all layered on top of each other like sediment. The people of modern China carry evidence of ancient mixture between northern and southern lineages that were once as distinct as separate species might be. Ancient DNA, wherever scientists have looked, from the skeleton that has waited thousands of years for someone to finally listen to what it has to say. Each new genome adds another, unbroken chain of descendants reaching forward to a future none of them could ever have imagined. The next time you meet someone from India or anywhere else on this planet and wonder about the roots of who they are, remember this. Their body is carrying an archive that predates every empire, every religion, every language spoken today. A quiet, patient record of hunter-gatherers who walked out of Africa, of farmers who tamed wild grasses into wheat and barley, of horsemen who thundered across open grassland on animals no human had ever ridden before, all of them. Skeptics pushed back hard, and rightly so, because stone tools alone cannot prove who made them or where those tool makers ultimately ended up. Archaeology needed something more direct, something biological, and this is precisely where the extraordinary science of ancient and modern DNA sequencing entered the picture, transforming an archaeological hypothesis into something that could actually be tested against the hard evidence written inside human cells. Beginning in earnest around 2015, international teams of geneticists, including researchers from the Wellcome Sanger Institute in the United Kingdom, King Abdulaziz City for Science and Technology in Saudi Arabia, and university laboratories across the Gulf states, began systematically collecting and sequencing DNA from populations across the Arabian Peninsula. comparing the results against ancient genomes recovered from archaeological sites throughout Africa, the Levant, Europe, and Central Asia. What they discovered first confirmed something researchers had long suspected, but never definitively proven, that every single non-African population alive on Earth today, whether their ancestors ended up in Scandinavia, Japan, Australia, or the Americas, descends overwhelmingly from a relatively small founding population, likely numbering only in the low thousands, that successfully left Africa sometime between 50 and 70,000 years ago. This means the person reading a headline in Norway and the person herding goats in the mountains of Yemen share an almost unbelievably recent common ancestor in the grand scope of human history, a shared genetic bottleneck event so narrow that geneticists sometimes compare humanity's entire non-African population to the descendants of a single small village, and the geography of the modern Arabian Peninsula sits almost exactly at the crossroads of that dispersal, wedged between Africa and Asia like a stepping stone deliberately placed by evolution itself. But here is where the story becomes genuinely thrilling, because when researchers dug deeper into the genetic data from modern Arabian populations, they found something almost nobody expected: fragments of DNA belonging not to modern humans at all, but to an entirely different extinct species of human being, the Neanderthals. For decades, Neanderthals were popularly imagined as brutish, doomed evolutionary dead ends, a separate and inferior branch of humanity that vanished without leaving any lasting trace. That image was permanently shattered in 2010 when the Neanderthal Genome Project, led by the Swedish geneticist Svante Pääbo, whose groundbreaking work would eventually earn him the Nobel Prize in 2022, successfully sequenced a complete Neanderthal genome and compared it against modern human DNA from around the world. The results were staggering. Every population outside of sub-Saharan Africa carries measurable traces of Neanderthal ancestry, typically between 1 and 2% of the genome, evidence of interbreeding events that occurred as modern humans expanded out of Africa and encountered Neanderthal populations already living across the Middle East and Europe. Perhaps nowhere is this layered genetic complexity more vividly illustrated than among the Bedouin populations of the Arabian interior, communities whose nomadic pastoral lifestyle across the vast deserts of the peninsula has, in certain cases, preserved a degree of genetic isolation and distinctiveness that researchers find scientifically invaluable. Studies comparing Bedouin genomes against settled urban Arab populations along the coasts and in major historical trading cities reveal measurably different patterns of genetic diversity, patterns shaped by centuries of tribal endogamy, the practice of marrying within one's own extended kinship network, a cultural pattern not unlike similar endogamous century and the subsequent waves of migration, trade, and empire building that